Thank you, Lizzie. I'm Anne, and I work in Clarendon Shelter, which is for homeless women and children. And it was not the career that I set out to do in my life. When I was 16, I went away to be a chef, and I pursued that for since I was 16 for a number of years. And during the time of maybe from 16 up to until I was 39, a lot of things happened in my life, and which I obviously hadn't planned. But there was events in my life that happened. I got married and I have 3 children. And not long after my last child was born, my daughter, I started to use alcohol as the crutch, and to help me get through certain things that was going on in my life at that time. And I ended up becoming dependent on alcohol. I drank from I was 18 until I was 39. I'm 56 now. I drank from I was 18 to 39, and somewhere across in there I became an alcoholic. And there was a lot of hurt and pain caused by my drinking to others, but also to myself. And it's hard to explain to people if they haven't experienced the addiction of alcohol. It just takes away everything from me bit by bit by bit. And as I say, I ended up at the end of when I was 39, I was a daily drinker. I had a drink to get through every day. I was a functioning alcoholic for many years, but at the end I couldn't do anything except drink. And I was fortunate to have a good family, support. So my children were always well cared for, not by me, and this is just the truth of my life. There was neglect, emotional neglect for my children while I was going through that period in my life. And whenever I was 39, I was introduced to a group of people on a fellowship, who knew a way out of where I had got myself into. And I was introduced to this fellowship, and I was told that they could show me and help me, and how I felt about myself at that time. I hated myself more than anything in this world. The only really emotions I felt was shame, guilt, and remorse. And I felt that nobody would want to help me. It's quite a lonely place to be, again, due to social stigma towards addiction, and then also the anger of family who can't figure out why you just don't stop, and it's just not that simple. But I got into recovery through that fellowship, and for 15 years now, I haven't had to take a drink. I went on a recovery program, and what I had to do at that point was find a power that was greater than alcohol, and it turned out to be God, and I had to rely on God to show me, and trust in Him to show me a path out of what I was living, and He did. I'm in recovery. I have a great life, and after that, I just thought. I hadn't been cooking for many years at that point, but when I came through what I came through, I got my first job, which was in the Methodist Mission, which is also a hostel that we're linked to as well. And I worked in the kitchen, but I yearned to be out doing the support work with the people who were helping, the homeless men and stuff. And since somebody reached out and helped me, and after that, I just wanted to help others, and so I became a support worker in the mission, in the Methodist Mission, and I worked there for 11 years. And then in 2017, sorry, I got an opportunity to go over to the women's hostel for 3 months. Still there, I didn't leave. I thought I'll never work with women because women are harder to work with than men. That was my perception. But when I got into that shelter, there was just something about the place. I loved it instantly. I wasn't afraid of the women I was working with. I mean, I loved it, and I just thought, this is where I want to be. So I asked, could I stay there? And I was fortunate to be allowed to stay and work there. I didn't go back to the mission. And I've been in Clarendon shelter since, and again, what we do is, I suppose, we bring our life experience into it. All the hurt and pain that we have relates to a lot of the pain that the women and children come into our shelter. Women come in who are addicted to all sorts of substances. You know, they come on from domestic abuse relationships, of which I have experience as well. You know, there's two times in my life where I was at my lowest ebb, you know, and I think it's when we talked about this yesterday, Lizzie, you know, when you're at your lowest ebb, you'll reach out and you'll ask, you know, God for help. And in both those situations in my life, that's exactly what happened. I was helped, you know, I was able to get out of the situation that I was living in. And again, you know, that's what we work with. The girls that come in to us, they don't see us as those people there. You know, we share some of our life experience with them. You know, they know that we also have lives. You know, we're not perfect. You know, we're human, and they can relate to us. I'm doing this job now 15 years, and I would not ask for any. I would not want to be anywhere else than what I am. It's so rewarding to see that you have managed to give somebody a bit of hope, because that's what was given to me. You know, hope that you can recover this, and, you know, hope that you will get a home, hope that you will have your children back, hope that you can change your life, you know. And it has happened for a lot of the women in our shelter, you know. And no matter how hard it is, and it is, we go through tough situations, you know, where people have lost their children, you know, while being with us, or people have relapsed into drug and drink use again, and they just at the lowest. And you see someone coming out of that mire and maybe doing small changes in their life, and no matter how hard and painful it is, you can sit back, you know, and some days somebody, you just look and go, that somebody has a smile on their face because, you know, something good has happened, and you go, this is why we're here. I can't explain to you how rewarding it is, you know. And really, I'm grateful that wherever I planned for my life when I was 16 was to go into cooking, and obviously God had different plans, and I believe I'm here where I'm meant to be, you know, to pass on my experience to others, you know, and try and help them as best I can too. And, you know, we have a great team of girls in the shelter, and Caron will explain a wee bit about hers now. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Good evening, everyone. And my experience has been, I have been actually nearly 33 years away from my hometown, Derry. And I am 55, 1955 I am. So 33 years is a long time to be away from Derry. I spent I have three boys. I spent a lot of time I lived in Florence in Italy, and where my partner and I lived there nearly 20 years with my children. And unfortunately, due to violence with my partner, Italy is not like this country where there is government help. It's very, very limited. Everything's very limited in Italy. So when I went through domestic violence, I could not leave Italy because of the Italian child. So I stayed in Italy to keep my family together. Now, in that process, I had to demonstrate. I was taken to court with my ex-partner because he actually wanted custody of the child 100%, and I didn't want that. I wanted my child to have the love from his parents in Italy and grandparents, and also from his Irish mother and brothers. So I stayed in Italy, and I worked for a designer company, and I met people from all walks of life, all different religions, and I worked in that company with 39 girls, and totally different work that I'm doing now. But I hadn't been home in 7 years, and I flew home on the 7th of April for a 10-day holiday. I had given up my job in Max Meyer, and I was going to work for a company called a designer company again in the same area. I needed a fresh start. And during my walk of life, I would have said the most important, I mean, it's amazing to say, oh, you lived in that, why are you home? No, it's not like that. It's I was in a country where it wasn't mine, it wasn't my language. Standing in court and holding my medal in my left hand and speaking Italian, I had no translator, and trying to keep my family together was the most important thing for me. And having no family support in a foreign country, you know, so I just find it all around me. I find a lot of compassion of people around me, and friends and everything else. When I came home in 2017, I found myself homeless, and I went into the shelter as a resident. Now, in that time in the shelter, the night I went into the shelter, I cried all night. And actually, it was Anne that introduced me into the shelter because I shouldn't have been in that shelter. This was my thought. And, you know, there's a lot of stigma about homeless shelters. And I never slept as well as I did that night. On the following morning when I woke up, I felt like something, I don't know what it was, but I knew everything was going to be okay. I left the shelter after finding accommodation, a little flat, and I actually, in finding the flat, one day, one of the ladies that work in the shelter where I work now came down and saw me very depressed. And she says, "What's going on here?" Well, I was used to a completely different life in Italy. I was working constantly. I was around people all the time, different nationalities. So here I was just, boom, I was lost. I was lost in my own hometown. And it was absolutely horrifically frightening. And I wouldn't wish it for anybody coming back home after being away so long. I would be there to help him at the first moment. But the thing about it was that when the lady was manager, her name was Marie, she came down and she saw me depressed. She saw something in me. She's very spiritual anyway. She saw something in me and she just said, "Tomorrow you're up volunteering." Well, that was 3 years ago. So I did the volunteering and then I started to do volunteering work in night shifts and twilight shifts because we do all that. And then 14 months ago, I am now a full-time support worker in Ashmore House, where I now know where is my place. I didn't know it all these years, but I found it. I found it in Ashmore House. I found it in Clarendon Night Shelter. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thanks very much, Anne and Karen. Every time I hear your story, I get emotional. I loved being able to talk to you yesterday as well. You really are so inspiring, and like that, both of you have shown so much compassion, and you show compassion daily within your work. And the story you told of how you received compassion and how that now manifests itself for others is just truly inspiring. And we thank you again for coming on and talking to us. I'm going to move on now to Father Farn, who is going to talk to us about compassion and how we can implement it in our lives. I'm very biased because Father Farn is my parish priest, so I think he'll have all the answers, and I've given him the most difficult thing to come and talk about, but I'm sure he won't hold that against me too much.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you very much. I always like to be on first because it's very hard to follow. And Karen were absolutely brilliant. They were really, really brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing about your lives. My name is John Farn. I'm from Mallinhead. I was born there in 1953, which makes me just 2 years short of my 70th birthday.
Wow.
I'm a generation older than Karen and Anne, and probably around the same age as Tony, I would think. But I was, as I said, born in 53, eldest of 5 children, 3 girls in the middle. My brother is the youngest of the family. I'm the eldest of the family. We were born on a small farm in Donegal. All my father's family, brothers and sisters, emigrated because that was the normal at the time. And all my mother's, well, 3 of my mother's 5 siblings emigrated as well. So that at that time, very often you were reared in order to emigrate because there was very little work around the place. I had toyed with the idea of priesthood when I was younger. Then it left me later on, and then in the probably it was in the year before, 77, which was 2 years before I went down to Maynooth. My grandmother died suddenly in the house that we were staying in, and it was a Good Friday. And the priest, who's still alive, Father John Doherty, arrived to give her the last rites. And I remember the panic that was in the house beforehand with the sudden death. And suddenly there was a calmness that came in at that time. And the thoughts about priesthood that I had before then came back to me. And I decided to give it a turn, as I say. Went down to Maynooth in 72, went down to Maynooth. And I with ups and downs in there. It was finally ordained in 79. my first parish was in Caron, and I was there from 79 to 88. Then into the cathedral. I was in the cathedral from 88 to 2002. And then I was headed back over the border again, out here to Iskehin and Upper Moville, or Muff, Iskehin and Drung. We were up here then since 2002 until now. So that's my a short thing about my background. I suppose I would say that when I went to Caron, I went into a totally different environment from what I was used to. I never saw a flag in my life. I never saw a red, white, and blue pavement in my life until suddenly I arrived there in the middle of it. And it was like mission territory for me. It was completely different from what my experience was. And it was, at the time, some of the troubles were going on at the time too. And so things were tense, and there was quite a few incidents that we were involved in, and just because of shootings and things like that. But I learned more about priesthood and life probably in the first 6 months in Caron than I had learned in 7 years in Maynooth. And I suppose one of the first things that I do remember, apart from all the political side of things and the bands marching outside my house and doing all sorts of stuff, was death. I had never seen anyone die in my life up until I went to Caron. And I remember the first, I know the family well. Since that, I'm not going to mention names, but it was there that the mother was dying after a long battle with cancer. And she was an elderly woman. And I remember the sadness that was there. I remember the distress of the family and the grandchildren. I remember the tears that were flowing. And I tried not to cry, but I ended up crying as well. So that was sort of my initial stages of my journey there in Caron. And at her burial afterwards, I came back into the house and I switched on the news to see what was happening. And ads were on from ITV. And I was saying, how can the world just be going on as normal with this family going through such trauma? I just could not understand it, couldn't fathom it at all. And that was my sort of initial coming to understand what this job really was going to be about. The other thing that I remember from that year in July, I went there on the 1st of May, and on the first day of July, I got a call to a man who was electrocuted on top of a roof out in the country part of the parish. And I remember going out there, I was terrified of what I would see or what I would expect. But when I got out there, my terror of what I would see disappeared. My terror then came about because I'm afraid of heights, and I had to go up a ladder to the roof. So that actually changed my whole terror changed to that. Then how am I going to get up and down here? I managed to get up and down, and it's only then after I managed that and was on the ground that I became aware really of the horror and the tragedy and the trauma that were surrounding me, and the sorrow and the sadness and the tears that were there. Despite all of that, I'm going through a lot of other deaths there and tragedies of various kinds. I was appointed to the cathedral in 88. And in 1996, I was at home. I was on my holidays in November, and my father and my mother had gone up to Clarendon. And my father came back down, took the paper, read it, and my mother made soup. And 3 of us sat around the table to have soup, and my father fell off the chair and never spoke again. He died suddenly, just beside me at the table. And I remember obviously the trauma of that and trying to get things together, getting an ambulance, getting a doctor up to the very back end of Malhead, never easy to do. But my father died and never recovered from that. But that was the first time that I can truly say I understood what grief was. And that was the first time that I could truly say that I knew how others felt when they went through bereavement of any sort. And it's the first time in many ways that I did experience what a feeling of compassion for others meant, because I could feel now what they felt when they lost a loved one. So that was a learning experience. It was a very tough experience, but a very valuable experience, because it meant from then on that I truly did feel compassion, to suffer along with that, the word compassion means. And I really did then understand what they were going through and how difficult a thing that was. And I know from those families, and many like them, suffer other types of tragedy and other types of losses. And while I felt sorry for them and was sad for them, it was only then that I knew what bereavement really was and felt like. And compassion is a major element in the scriptures. It's a major element in the scriptures. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Mark chapter 6. And when the people were without food, Jesus said, I feel compassion for the people because they have stayed with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And then he went on and asked his disciples, he said, be compassionate as my heavenly Father is compassionate. So it wasn't just, he didn't want people to experience compassion from him or his Father, but he wanted them to show that same compassion to others. That was his challenge to his disciples. He told a parable of the Good Samaritan. He was compassionate towards a man who was robbed, who was his enemy, because the Samaritan and the Jews did not see eye to eye. They were like the Troubles in the North. There was like a Shinner and a DP man or UVF man together. It was that type of relationship. And the Samaritan reached out to somebody who was his complete enemy, while the people you would have expected to be compassionate, the priest, the Pharisee, who was the important person in the Jewish religion, passed by and ignored him. But Jesus told this parable to ask others, people to be the same, but also to say that you don't have to be part of any particular religion to be compassionate. Anybody can be compassionate. And then we have the prodigal son. The prodigal son was the other compassionate father, sitting back, waiting for this son who had gone off the rails to come back. And he ran out to meet him, and he hugged him and he kissed him, and he had a feast and he celebrated. And he showed his compassion in that by welcoming home the person who didn't really deserve it, but he felt the loneliness of his son, and he wanted to make him feel accepted and well again. And as Christians, Jesus is asking all of us to be compassionate to those who are in dire circumstances, those who are in helpless circumstances. And compassion leads to action. It's no use in me sitting back and saying, I feel sorry for that person, I know that, and I feel, but it leads to action. If I have the opportunity to be active, and that is exactly what Anne and Caron have shared earlier on tonight, that they have experienced compassion themselves, but that has led to action in their lives. They have gone on to show that same compassion to other people. And then after the time of Jesus, when Jesus was gone and had gone unto heaven again, St. Paul was writing to the Colossians, and he asked them, and he said to them, as followers of Jesus, put on a heart of compassion. Compassion is a basic attitude required of the early Christians, and is also not to do that is required of us. Mercy is very similar to compassion. Being merciful to someone means responding to them with a compassionate heart. Jesus lived a life of mercy. He was merciful towards those who were sick, to those who were afflicted, to those who sought forgiveness. A Canaanite woman, again, someone who was completely an enemy of the Jews, came towards him and said, "Have mercy on me, my daughter is ill." And Jesus, in a response of mercy, healed her daughter. Doesn't matter who she was, color, creed, orientation, religion, anything else. He reached out to that person in compassion. And Jesus also emphasized the need for mercy in the Beatitudes. Be merciful as your heavenly Father is merciful. Mercy doesn't end with me. I must show that mercy to others. You know, when we're praying the Our Father, and I often think of this myself and say, "Oh God, how is this going to affect me?" We pray the Our Father, "Father, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." That's a very, very difficult line. So I'm asking God the Father to be merciful to me in exactly the same way as I am merciful to others. That's a very, very big challenge for me as an individual. And if I look at the way that Jesus describes the final judgment, you know, the sheep and the goats, and if you're naked and hungry and all that, he doesn't say, "How often did you tell lies? How often did you curse? How often did you disobey your parents? How often do you that?" He says, he doesn't ask those questions. He asks, "What have you done to show your mercy, your understanding, your care for those who are less well off in society?" And also that depends whether you're a sheep or a goat. And that is the big challenge. Am I willing to show compassion and mercy to others and to go and try my best to help them out in their need in whatever way I can myself within reason? Because obviously my own family and that comes first, but I had to be able to reach out to others. And that is what loving my neighbor is all about. No matter what your situation, what you think about yourself, Jesus loves you because he is merciful to you. And I'll just end with the wee story about the mother who asked her young fella, "How much do you love me?" And he said, "That much." He put his hands about half a foot apart. And then when at birthday time, when she bought him his presents, he said, "How much do you love me?" He said, "I love you that much." It had gone to a meter apart. And when it came to Christmas, and she said, "Paddy, how much do you love me?" He put his hands wide out and said, "I love you that much, Mommy." And she said, "That reminded me of Jesus on the cross. So every time I look at the cross, I see Jesus saying to me, 'I love you that much.'" That is what compassion and mercy is about. And no matter what situation you find yourself in, or what you feel guilty about, or what you think of yourself, Jesus is saying to you, "I love you that much." Thank you.